Going up, it's just, you're constantly wondering if you're going too hard and if you're going to die. So, like they say, it's an ultimate mental battle.
Is that what keeps bringing you back year after year, the ultimate mental battle?
Yeah, I don't care what racers show up, even if somebody shows up better than me, This is a test against yourself. Everybody that's out here is doing it, and everybody's testing themselves, and it's great.
It's called America's Ultimate Challenge. Each year, over 2,500 runners flock to Manitou Springs to challenge themselves against the mountain known as Pikes Peak. This year, runners from 46 different states and 8 foreign countries have come. They all start here and make their way towards the clouds.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Steep Stuff Podcast. I'm your host, James Loriello. And today we've got a really, really special episode, guys. We are going to dive into the Pikes Peak Marathon and Ascent history. I'm joined by my very special co-host, none other than legend, Mr. Mark Tatum. Mark, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks, James. It's an honor to be here and talk about this great race.
You know, you were like the first, literally you were the first person that came to mind when I'm sitting here and just kind of thinking about like, all right, how can we make like something really special? Like normal interviews are fine before a race, like, leading up to it, but Pikes Peak Marathon and Ascent just has so much history to it, and there's so much more to the race that I just feel like we have to do it justice by making an episode about the history. So
yeah, it's one of the most prominent races in the world, and trail races especially, and even as far as marathons go, it's the third oldest marathon in the U.S. and the longest consecutive running marathon in the U.S. because during COVID, of course, Boston was not run. So Pikes Peak Marathon now has the record of most consecutive continual events.
That's crazy. So 58 was the first one.
Right.
But technically there's history dating back to the 30s, right?
Yeah. So, the Pikes Peak Highway, the paved road, it's now paved. The road that went up was originally a private road. And then the people who owned that road, they ended up buying the Cog Railroad, and then in the 30s, and then there was some kind of agreement with the National Forest Service, and the Forest Service took over the main road going up. And so to kind of celebrate that, some people got together and had in 1936, they had an ascent race up Bar Trail. Bar Trail, of course, had existed for a while then. And so they had a race up Bar Trail. I think there were 6 or 8 or 12 men who ran that race. And one of them almost broke 3 hours.
It's pretty solid.
So it was like 3 hours and 50 seconds or something like that.
So technically the Ascent then came before the marathon in a lot of ways, in theory.
Yeah. And that was a shorter course. That started at the bottom of Bar Trail.
Okay.
So that was and we can talk about how the course has changed over the years.
Yeah, definitely.
But that was the first one.
Wow.
And it was a pretty good time.
Yeah.
For that time.
30s was a wild, it's kind of crazy to think about just so much history. how it connects history to Colorado too. You'd think in the 30s, like what culturally is going on at the time. And it's like, who would think about, in technology at the time, like in boots, but what were they wearing? I guess we didn't have sneakers, So it's like we're running up this trail in boots to who's the fastest one to do it,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what they were running in the 30s. That's a good question. Probably leather shoes.
Yeah.
I don't know what else was available.
Yeah, no cushion. Definitely no hocus.
Well, I know in the 50s, in the late 50s, the runners were wearing like dime store tennis shoes. I mean, like Keds.
Yeah.
That you would buy.
Interesting. And the 50s 58 was technically the first full marathon, correct?
Right. So in 1958 was the or was it 56?
No, so I've got 50. No, I think it was 56.
50. In 1956 was the sesquicentennial, the 150th anniversary of when Pike discovered Pikes Peak, and so some people wanted to do something for that, and this guy, I guess he was born in Finland, Arnie. Let me read his name. Arnie Suominen wrote a letter to the Gazette, to the local newspaper, and challenged. He was a doctor from Delray Beach, Florida, and he wrote a letter to the editor challenging all the smokers to a race up Pikes Peak, and he said, "I will beat you up Pikes Peak if you're a smoker, like up and down." That was the key, up and down. And so some people got together and organized it and made it happen I think it was in August of 1956, exactly 20 years after that very first ascent.
That's crazy. The smokers versus the non-smokers. What a weird thing.
Yeah, it was very weird because during those first few years of the race, you were classified as a smoker or a non-smoker. It wasn't about age groups or anything.
Elites versus non-elites.
Smoker versus non-smoker. So in that very first race, Monty Wolford won, and he did not come close to the ascent of 3 hours. And they started it right in front of the Cog Railway.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's where it finished too, apparently. So up and down. And there are ascent times and then there's finish times. But I guess what was one of the more interesting things about that was that the guy who won the 1936 race, he showed up as a smoker. And he made it to the top, but he got a ride down. He couldn't finish it. I guess that there was only one or two smokers who finished, but they didn't beat this Arnie Suominen guy.
Interesting.
Who was like 5th or 6th.
Let me ask you a quick question. I wouldn't expect you to be able to know this or answer this, but so if it started at the Cog Railway back in the day, would it take the traditional marathon route, or would it make that right to go up what is now the switchbacks on the W's, or would it take that traditional marathon route and connect to the W's?
Yeah, up Ruxton.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've wondered that myself.
It's interesting. Yeah.
I suspect it went up Ruxton.
That would make sense. I mean, how long has that road even been paved for? Who knows?
It hasn't been paved that long. And you can see like the later videos, it's paved about to where it is now.
Yeah.
But in various
Interesting. That's really
forms.
Cool. So the reason I had 58 fresh in my head was because I was thinking of Arlene Piper,
Yep.
Who was the technically first female ascent finisher, correct?
Right. So in 1958, Arlene Piper she owned, with her husband, she owned a gym, a local gym here in Colorado Springs. And so she had this idea. She heard about the ascent or the Pikes Peak Marathon. And she just got this idea to try to run it and showed up in her dime store tennis shoes or whatever they were, and ran up to the top, but she couldn't finish, and so she got a ride down that first year in 1958.
She did. Okay.
And then in and but her time was recorded, but it wasn't official.
5:59:18.
Yeah,
which is, I mean, honestly, for 1958 in dime store shoes,
yeah,
that's pretty solid.
With not a lot of training.
Yeah,
but in the following year, she did train a lot for it, and she knew what she was getting into, and she showed up with her daughter, who was not very old, like 8 or 9, and her daughter ran with her most of the way up, and her daughter stopped at the top, and then Arlene went ahead and ran all the way back down. She ran down in under 2 hours that day.
Wow.
And became the first woman to ever finish a marathon in the United States.
That is so cool. 1959. That's wild.
So Arlene Piper. And there was another woman who
Yes.
started that day.
Got to the Ascent and didn't
Yeah.
finish, didn't run
Yeah.
down. There was also a horse in the race that day.
Yeah, that's right. I forget.
Min the horse finished, I think it was only the Ascent, 8 hours, 46 minutes.
Right, yeah. Well, actually, I think the 8 hours and 46
round
minutes,
trip? Yeah.
that was the round trip, because Min the horse was leading at the top. But then had some physical problems. I forget what they were, and was passed.
Oh, man.
Coming down. But for a long time, Min the horse had the fastest ascent time.
I think that, I mean, I looked back through the history. I couldn't find any of the horses running the race. So that might be the one and only horse to ever do Pikes.
There must have been horses that went up Bar Trail, though, way before.
For sure.
Because that was just kind of the mode of travel back then.
Yeah.
So,
but as far as like official race, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they put like man versus horse or man.
well,
and
that's how
woman.
Western States started, right?
Yeah, man versus horse.
So-
Gordy Ansley racing horses.
Yeah. So, yeah, those first few years didn't have a lot of competitors. There were women in those first years, 61, 62, 63, but they kind of changed it so the women and the junior men would, and eventually the older men over 40 would just run the Ascent.
Interesting.
And so if you were 19 to 34 or 19 to 39, depending on the year, male, you had to run the whole marathon. You couldn't just run the Ascent. So the race became a little bit more official in 1966. And so one of the guys who had been running it all those years, what was his name? Rudy Fall. So he was one of the, I think he was the initial organizer of those first races, but then they kind of made it more organized by 1966, and it had become more prominent by then. And so we started having people from out of state show up, and there were still only 100 or 150 runners showing up at the start line. I guess but there were a lot of juniors and women who would run the Ascent, so sometimes they don't get included in those totals.
Official results, yeah.
And in fact, like if you look at the Gazette results, sometimes they would print all these names that don't appear in the official results, and so it's maybe they just entered, and then the Gazette got the entry list and just printed them all. I don't know. So. There was a lot of juniors and women who fell into that category of they're in the Gazette, but they're not in the official results.
Interesting. Yeah, I will say one thing. I mean, just in the research for this episode, the Marathon and Ascent website is like a great database of just results and data. There's good stuff in there.
Let's talk about that, because that's one of the things in my mind that makes a great race.
Oh, for sure.
Is having a database, a searchable database of all your past results, because otherwise there is no history. If we can't figure out, if we can't compare ourselves to races in the past, to great athletes in the past, and measure ourselves that way, then you're not going to have a great race.
Well, this is one of the few races where literally multiple iterations of the best in the world have actually shown up. You're talking Carpenter, Rémi, Kilian, I mean, on the women's side, Kim Dobson with the dominance. I mean, just so many, just years and years and years. And then like, I even like, I love that they put the Ascent split and the Dissent split.
Oh, yeah.
So we can get, you really can get into the nitty gritty on some of the most historical, splits and whatever. It's cool. Yeah.
I love the splits. And you mentioned all those more recent guys and women, but there were just as many great athletes who showed up in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When there were no other trail races really in the U.S. and really in the world. So, and back to the database thing, we have a record of all that, and it's searchable. That really the Pikes Peak. I love the Pikes Peak.
Yeah, whoever put that together,
results database,
or whose idea that was to like actually provide that, because there's a lot like, for instance, like earlier before we recorded this, we talked about like Series and All. We talked about Marathon du Mont Blanc, and a lot of these like more European historical races that maybe got started a little bit later. But if you want to go back in time, like for instance, like a lot of people don't know that like Joe at one point in time raced Kilian. And like, there's a lot of like, and that wasn't that long ago, but like most people can't find those results. It's interesting to be able to have that and be able to go back and search that history and see, who stacked up against who. Like I said, even up until today, when I was doing research for like some of Matt Carpenter, like the 1993, 1992, Carpenter back and forth, and some of the battles that he had. People don't realize that nor know it. So yeah, do you know who started the database? The results database? Matt Carpenter. It was Matt. Okay.
So Matt was very obsessed with this race, and he also learned. He taught himself how to make websites and things like that. And so he was a lead. He wrote a lot. He wrote articles for lots of local and national magazines and newspapers. And so he's partly responsible for continuing the fame and building up the fame of the Pikes Peak Marathon and Ascent. That's really
so crazy.
He was a large part of that. And so he had this, he's still out there, skyrunner.com.
Yeah.
And that's where all the results were.
I've been trying to get his book
He
forever.
did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the book is out of print.
I know.
There's some ways to get it.
You got to know a guy.
But I think it's you can check it out maybe even out of the library. I don't know.
I'll have to look. Manitou Library or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, but even before Matt, there were like the Jemez Pueblo runners from down in New Mexico.
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
Yeah,
this is 60s era? Or?
Yeah, in the 60s, they have, I don't know that much about them, but they had a tradition of running down there. And Steve, there's this guy there's several men from the Jemez Pueblo that made their way up here in 1966. And Steve Gauchapin, I think that's how you say his name, won the marathon 6 years in a row, starting in 1966. And he was really probably the first national class runner to show up, the first really good guy. I mean, he was unbeatable at that time. And he was in his 20s, and some years other people would come up with him and they'd all run the race and finish on the top 10 or whatever. But he helped put the race on the map because of his dominance.
Interesting. And that's like an era. I mean, 6 years, like I like to think of it because this race just has so much history. I'd like to think of it as like in different eras. And I would call 6 years a solid era. That's dominance.
Well, there's only one other person who's won it 6 years in a row, and that was Matt Carpenter.
Right.
But Matt didn't do that until his late in his career.
Yeah, 40s. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so that was the bulk of the 60s. Where does Chuck Schmid come into it then? Is he 70s?
Chuck Schmid was 19 years old in 1972, and he showed up and ran the marathon. I forget what. I've talked to Chuck, and I forget what his reason was. He had heard about this race and he showed up. He was visiting here. I think he was from California at the time. He lives in Colorado now. But he showed up for the marathon. They were only running the marathon in 1972, and he won at 19 years old. And he had a really fast time. He set that was on the shorter course. So the course started at the cog rail and finished at the cog rail.
Okay.
I think at that time.
It's just a couple miles, yeah.
Or it might have finished at the bottom of, I forget when they moved the finish down to the bottom of Ruxton.
Yeah, the 70s was, even like I'd say mid to late 70s into the 80s as well was just like a very influential time. I'll let you finish talk about Chuck.
Yeah.
But
So Chuck Smead showed up in 72, and then in 73, Rick Trujillo came, and he won the following year. And Rick, do you know the history of Rick Trujillo? So he was from Uray and was a prominent high school runner and college runner, I think. And he ran a lot of trails when he was a geologist. He has a really interesting story. He was a geologist, went all over Colorado and all over the U.S. and then eventually all over the world running when he got to go do these mining geology trips. So cool. He has a lot of stories to tell. But he was one of the founders of the Hard Rock 100 as well.
Yeah.
And he was one of the founders, if not the founder. He was one of the early race directors of the Imogene Pass Run.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So that's probably where he's
known
as much as anything.
Is he still, I think I might have met him. Is he still alive, still around?
Oh, yeah. He's still alive.
Maybe. I don't know.
And he's in his 70s.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually think I have met him on Imogene Pass.
Yeah, probably so. Probably so. So Rick, as I said, Chuck Smead didn't really like. He did that marathon the first year. He said it killed him, and so he didn't like running the marathon. So I think, like the next year, Rick he beat Rick to the top, but Rick Trujillo beat him on the downhill. And after that, Chuck wasn't as interested in running that downhill or doing the full marathon. So he went in. I think it was 1976, they changed the course to what it is now. They started it down by Memorial Park.
Okay. And
then the marathon, both the Ascent and the marathon go up to the top, and then the marathon finishes it at the bottom of Ruxton. So that course started in 1976, and that was a significant year for the records because
it was Lynn's year. Yeah.
Yeah, because Chuck Smead set the Ascent record that stood for 15 or 18 years. This is the one that Matt Carpenter ended up breaking in 92 at 2:05:22. It's still one of the very fastest Ascent times. And It was the very first year that the Ascent was run on the new configuration or the longer configuration.
That's got to be top. That's easily top 15, top 10.
No, I think it's still top 5.
Is it really? Wow. Oh, man.
And so 5 or 6. I was just looking at that today. And so on that same day, Lynn Borkland showed up, and she was also, I think she was 19.
Yeah.
And she showed up and she set an Ascent record of 2:44, and she was the first woman to go under 3 hours.
Which I don't know. Out of all the records I looked at, obviously, listen, what Matt's been able to do, what Rémi, what a lot of these guys have been able to do is incredible. But I think for the time period, like 76 to run 2:44:47, like I know elite dudes that can't run 2:44:47.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy.
And she was. Yeah, she did that in 76, and then she came back in 81. She came back a few times, but in 81, she really set the record at 2:33:31, which is still one of the top.
Yeah.
Or top 5 times, I think.
For sure. Yeah.
And her marathon time was probably better. She ran a 4:15 in 1981.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
That was crazy. And in 1981 is also the year that one of the other Jemez Pueblo men showed up, Al Waki, and he had a reputation of being one of the best runners in the country, at the mountain runners in the world at the time, and he raced in a lot. I wish I knew more about him, but I know that he had a string. If you're familiar, if you ever heard of the La Luz trail run down in near Albuquerque, that's another super old trail race that began in the 60s, and he totally dominated that race. And he came up here a few times and won.
They got to bring it back.
80s.
I think they stopped it like a few years ago.
2019 was the last year I ran that.
Yeah.
And then it got shut down when it went through the permitting process at the National Forest or the National Park Service. I don't know which, but the government realized that because it goes through a wilderness area there in La Luz, on the La Luz Trail, they didn't have a permit that was grandfathered in like Western States does to run it through the wilderness area.
That's a bummer.
And so everyone thought that they had it grandfathered, but apparently it never got written into and so the government officials decided that they couldn't permit it anymore. So there's been some New Mexico senators or congressmen who have run that event in the past, and they've tried to revive it, try to get it rewritten, but it just hasn't been a priority in Congress.
It's a bummer. Hope they can bring it back.
Apparently it takes an act of Congress to make it happen. And so it hasn't gotten written in.
Interesting.
La Luz would be one of my very favorite races, and I was lucky to run it that way.
Literally, buddy Jeff Cuno just ran it today on like hard. I don't know if you saw it on Strava. He put up a pretty solid time on there.
Yeah, he ran that year. I did too. So.
Yeah. He's coming to the Ascent or the marathon. I think the Ascent.
Cool.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's. So we got through the 70s. One thing I do want to go back to was a little more history on your buddy Chuck Smead. You said he was also a Series Anal winner in the past?
Yeah, Chuck went on. He was one of the early pioneers of international trail running, and so he found out about the Series Anal and several other mountain races and went over there one summer and won Sierras Anal. I think he was the first American to win, and before Pablo Vigil.
Yeah.
And when he would go back for several summers there, I know he went back to Europe and did a bunch of races and spent all summer there.
That's crazy. Really cool. So we have had early Americans that go over there and win.
He was one of the first. Chuck and Pablo were I think the very first ones.
Yeah.
Is on the American side.
Pablo has a little bit of history with Pikes as well, right? Like you said he's shown up before.
He's run it once.
Okay.
I think he was in the top 5.
Okay. Interesting.
I don't know if he did the marathon or the Ascent.
Yeah. It's just crazy how many people have like crossed paths with this race.
Yeah, I know. Well, have you ever heard of Pat Porter, the famous road racer in the 80s?
No.
70s and 80s. He was a cross country champion, U.S. champion, and he went to Alamosa for school and lived and trained there. He showed up in 1981 and won the Ascent, I think.
Wow.
But, his times were... It wasn't, he doesn't have one of the fastest times, but he did win.
Yeah. All right. So we got to the 70s, got to the 80s. Let's talk about, do we want to dive more through the 80s during that like era or?
Yeah, that's all that I have. I mean, I'm sure I'm skipping over stuff.
Well, you know what? How about this? Let's enter this. Like one of the big things I know we wanted to address and talk about was like, why is this race a big deal? Why is this like not a normal trail race? Like why is who pushed this forward, and why is it continue to be year after year one of the biggest trail races on the planet?
Yeah, that's something I've thought about a lot. Is what made this? There were a lot of, maybe not a lot, but there were other trail races that could have been prominent and historical, but they've dropped off or never became famous, and ultimately, it comes down to Pikes Peak, which is such a recognized name or recognized mountain in in U.S. history, and also I think partly because of Colorado Springs has done a good job, whether it's the city government or the newspapers or the businessmen or the residents here. People in Colorado Springs have always been great promoters.
They're very prideful of it.
Yeah, and they've been
be
very purposeful about promoting things, whether it's the Pikes Peak Highway or the race up the Pikes Peak Highway, or Garden of the Gods, or one of the 100 tourist traps that were here in the 20s and 30s. As the automobile allowed people to visit Colorado for the first time. And so it's just been kind of a tradition of Colorado Springs to promote things. And so you can go back in the Gazette and see articles written in the 60s and 70s about this race when there weren't that many people doing the race, but articles would get written. And there was an article in the 1975 Sports Illustrated magazine about a fell runner from England who was coming over to do the Pikes Peak Marathon because he had heard about it.
Oh, wow.
Well, how did he hear about it? Way over there. And, just some
Word
of
of
that
mouth.
incessant promotion from Colorado Springs, I think. And plus just the idea of a mountain race going up a 14er that
Because there's not
captured people's imaginations.
Other than Hard Rock, this is the only race that I think incorporates a 14er, right?
Well, Mount Evans does.
Yeah, the Mount Evans race.
But that's a road race.
How does that work? So is it like, this is something I actually never asked Ryan and Jordan. Like, how does it work with the permitting and stuff like that? Like, because it's not a wilderness area.
Right.
It's Pike National Forest. So I guess it's like grandfathered into the system with that, or?
No, it just, you can apply for events in national forests.
Okay.
That's easier to obtain those permits.
Yeah.
And so they probably have a much tougher time with the Manitou Springs and any private property that
That's
they
true.
might cross there at the bottom.
Going up Ruxton and everything.
Yeah. I'm sure that there's some private property lines there.
It's funny. I always see houses for sale. Like, I'm starting to see more and more houses for sale, like on Ruxton. And like, I was running the other day coming down Bar, and there was one, and my buddy's like, "Oh man, like I wonder where that's going for." I was like, "Dude, you couldn't pay me to live on that road." Like, especially it's just so heavily trafficked and so many people. But yeah.
Yeah, I've wondered the same thing too, and then think, no, that's
Too many people. Like during the summer, at least, like October through January is great, but I don't know.
it'd be an adventure living there, and you'd always be close to the trail.
Yeah, you'd be super fit. That's for sure. Yeah, you can't complain. There's no excuses to not go on the incline or whatever.
Right.
So back to what makes this race so great. One of the things that I thought was very interesting that we had talked about before was the race kind of made a pivot in the late 90s, early 2000s, and even through present, where you're seeing this race constantly, either World Mountain Running Champs, or you're seeing it in the Golden Trail Series races. Like, what do you think, what was the pivot that the race really made to kind of rescue it from just being a normal event to something bigger?
Yeah, a lot with the running boom in the late 70s and early 80s, like I think in 1980 was the first time it like really sold out. They had a hard limit with, I don't know when this hard limit was put in, but there was a hard limit from the National Forest Service permit of like 1,800 runners for the Ascent and 800 for the marathon. And so I think they reached that limit in 1980, or they reached some limit in 1980, and it started selling out. And when you have a race that starts to sell out, you don't care so much, maybe, about attracting elites, because you don't need to.
Right.
You don't have to pay for elites. You don't have to put them up in housing. You don't have to give them free entries. You don't have to do any of that stuff. You could just cater to the hobby jogger, or who sees this mountain and sees it as justifiably a great achievement just to go do it. And that's what the race is for most people. It is a great day out on the mountain.
Yeah.
And it's the best way to go up Pikes Peak and back down. Honestly, if you're going to go do it just one day a year, go sign up for the race, because you get supported by all the people who are in the race. It is a fantastic day on the mountain.
It is.
So yeah, that's one of the things that makes the race so good. But you see this with a lot of races where they just end up catering to the non-competitive racer.
Yeah.
And there's always, like with Pikes Peak or any race, some locals will show up and set a fast time, but not a lot of competition. But we know now that Pikes Peak is one of the most competitive races, and there have been some years recently where it is the most competitive mountain or trail race in the USA.
Yeah.
And I could make that case for several different years. But it didn't just become that way. And there were times in the 90s after Carpenter, and we're going to talk about the 92, 93 years with Carpenter. But after that, there was a mindset that we don't have to invite elites. We don't have to allow them. We don't have to give them, we don't have to set aside spots for them, and they're just going to have to plan ahead like everybody else. Well, elites can't always plan ahead because they don't know if they're going to be injured. They don't know what other opportunities come up. They don't know, there's so many more things that they have to worry about, championships or whatever.
Yeah.
And the board in the late 90s had kind of decided they stopped paying prize money. And this is something they had always done, was pay prize money.
Yeah.
Maybe not always. I don't know when that started. But they were paying prize money and they stopped. And then they did not do any set-asides for elite runners anymore. And so even if, they had the Triple Crown event, which was the Garden of the Gods race. I don't know what
I think was it BTMR?
Well,
or
it
no?
wasn't BTMR until like 2002. So I think it was the race that's been discontinued now. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, I didn't even know there was a third.
Yeah, there was another race in July, and so a trail race. It was a great race, and it was put on by the Pikes Peak Roadrunners, but it was part of the Triple Crown.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the Triple Crown was a big deal.
Yeah.
And so there were a couple years apparently where the top two men in the Triple Crown standings after the first two races weren't entered into the Pikes Peak Ascent, and the organizers of Pikes Peak wouldn't let them in.
That's dumb.
Yeah, it is dumb.
What's the point of that?
So, and they had big arguments about it, and Matt Carpenter boycotted the race in 98, 99,
Okay.
99, 2000, something like that. And he wrote some editorials on it, talked a lot to the race organizers about this, and they just didn't budge. But in 2002, they had a change on the board, and I think that was about the time that Ron Elgin took over as well, and they started to loosen up. And I think, was it 2000? Yeah, so there was one race where
It had to have been early 2000s, like somewhere between 2000 and 2002, maybe.
Yeah, so they start. Yeah, it was the Skyrunner year. It was that first Skyrunner year in 2003.
Okay.
That was a turning point, because before that they didn't care about all that stuff, and then I think through Matt's influence, it became a Skyrunner race in 2003, and so they had a lot more competitive runners show up that year.
Let me ask you this. What is the history behind that? Because I know, and there's just like not a lot on the internet about this. And as someone that kind of lived through it, I'm sure you got to see that firsthand. Like, what was that era like with Matt he had already achieved the course record at that point. The Skyrunner series comes in and they want to make it like a world or a US Skyrunner race. But like, was that like the only race in America that was doing that? Or like, was it unique? And like, what was Matt doing at the time? Because I know he used to be like sponsored by Fila. There was this like team running all over the world doing stuff. Yeah,
it was a weird time. You really should ask Matt about
that
stuff.
I'm curious.
And there are some other people in town that you could talk to as well. It was a time where the sport was growing a lot. So there was tremendous growth in trail running, in number of events, and the popularity of those events in trail running. And Matt was off doing all those other races because Pikes Peak didn't pay anything.
Yeah.
And he had other responsibilities or with his sponsors or whatever.
Yeah, he was a full professional athlete at that point.
That's right.
Yeah.
And one of the very first American pro trail runners.
Yeah.
Right. So I would like to know more about that too.
Yeah, it's on the list. That's the plan. We got to get him on one day.
but anyway, that 2003 race was special because the winner, the person who crossed the finish line first, was not declared the winner.
Ooh.
Because that was a year that the Skyrunners, it was a Spaniard who, I forget his name, but there were a couple Spaniards in the top three, and they apparently were, like they do in Europe, they were cutting the course on the way down. I don't know. It's not clear if they cut the course on the way up, but they did cut the course on the way down, because that's just the way they did it.
Yeah,
and they did not speak English very well, and so and I think that probably the race administration, the race promoters, didn't know enough to even know that was a thing.
Yeah,
we didn't know.
In America, we don't play that game.
Yeah, we just follow the trail, but so these guys, and Galen Burrell is the one who won that year, and Galen said that, yeah, I was running down, and I really couldn't see them once we got below tree line, but before that, it felt like they were making some time on me in some places, and it just felt weird.
Yeah.
And so they got disqualified and left out of the official results.
That's interesting.
And so Galen is he finished in 4 hours flat. And I think the first Spaniard finished in like 3:55 or something like that, 3:57.
So it wasn't too far. Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't that much. But I can't find any record of these guys. But apparently they separated out the Skyrunner results. They had a different compilation for Skyrunner results and the official results.
That's
so that the
wild.
Skyrunner series could continue could score their points. These guys came from Spain. And
they want their point.
You're not going to disqualify them just because they didn't understand. So
that's interesting.
That's
so
what happened.
They got to keep their official rank, if anything, and a dub is a dub for them, but just not America.
Right. Apparently. But if you look on the Skyrunner's Wikipedia page, it does not list them as winners.
Interesting.
There now, but I think they probably were, according to the stories I saw.
Wow, so that's such a pivot then. So in 2003, we pivot from there to, I mean, when was the next? Was it 2012 we get to? And that's where it's also skyrunning. Like, how many skyrunning championships do we have here, or skyrunning races?
Well, the Skyrunner years were 2003, 2004, and then 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Okay.
And I think I'm not sure if they were all marathon or some were marathon or some were just Ascent. I don't know which is which. And then in 2012, that was kind of a watershed year because the great Kilian Jornet shows up with Emily Forsberg. And that was the year that he first came to America, and he did, before the race and after the race, he did all these FKT attempts, or
there's videos of him
he went and ran all over the U.S. and
climbing the Grand.
Yeah, he did Western States before Pikes Peak, so that was the year of that he did that. So, Yeah, that was the last Sky Runner year for Pikes Peak.
Interesting. Yeah, and I feel like that changed the game for Pikes Peak. Once Kilian came over, made it, because that's when you see Solomon start to sink their teeth into the race and wanting to get, their athletes in. You see them sponsoring it, and obviously we'll get to that point, but like, it's just interesting that's, when you say watershed moment, like that was probably, even though like, I don't know, we talked about this a little bit too, like, I don't know. In my opinion, I don't think Kilian ran a great time in 2012. Like, it was solid, but it wasn't, considering Matt runs 2:16,
right. Yeah. I think maybe he had some other ideas, but I think also he was not pressed.
Yeah.
And then when you go back and read, I think about all the other stuff he was doing that summer. I was like, okay, I wonder why you didn't have your best race.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So
it's interesting, very interesting.
He had, he set a good time, but he did not. Everyone thought, oh, this is the chance for Matt's record to go down.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the things that elevated Matt's record to a higher level, is because Kilian tried it and he didn't didn't do it. And so I think it just gained even more prominence then.
Twice. So the year, I think it was 2012, and he ran 3:40.26, which is wild too, because Alex Nichols, local son of Colorado Springs, was only 7 minutes behind him in second place. That's...
Yeah, and Alex came he beat that time in 15 and 16, I think.
He did, yeah.
So
that's awesome.
That was early Alex Nichols.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like Anton Alex Nichols, because they went to Colorado College together. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's an interesting segue too, not to go too far off on a tangent, but it's very interesting to me that like in that time frame of like 2010 through like 2013, like Anton, before he got into the Leadville 100, applied for the Pikes Peak Marathon to get a free race entry and was accepted, but never checked the email. And it's just wild to me, because then I think it was Carpenter and Buzz that were able to get him into Leadville. Got him a pair of Sportiva shoes and did that whole thing.
Yeah.
And that kind of started the whole Leadville thing. He goes on and wins Leadville, and like his entire world changes. But like, how wild would it have been if he, instead of Leadville, he goes and wins the Pikes Peak Marathon that year, or challenges for the win?
Did that happen in 2006?
It was somewhere in that range, like somewhere in that time period. It was whatever year he won, the first year he won Leadville. That was the year. So yeah, it's just interesting how like history would have been different.
Yeah, it could have been totally different.
Yeah.
Totally different. But Anton has always said that he doesn't do well on pikes for some reason. I don't know. But so in addition to the Skyrunner years, there were the WMRA also. It was part of I think the Pikes Peak Marathon, or even in some years, I think it was just the Pikes Peak Ascent, was the WMRA Long Distance Championship.
Yep, World Long Distance, yep.
Yeah, so that also helped with the international prominence of the race. And I think we probably have Nancy Hobbs to thank for some of that as well, because she has been a long time. She's been on the board of WMRA, and I don't know when that started. Have you talked to Nancy yet? You really should talk to her. She knows all this stuff. But and she's been so essential to promoting the sport here in the U.S.
She's American Charting Association, right? Is that what she does? Yeah.
And she's here in town.
Yeah, it's local. So I've got, 2006, 2010, and 2014 for the World Long Distance Mountain Running Champ, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. So in 14, Sage Canaday won, and that was the year that Allie Mack jumped into the race, and really had never done a trail race before, but she had been training a lot on the incline.
Yeah.
And was kind of at post-college career and decided to try out her local Pikes Peak Ascent and won the world championship.
So crazy.
So
Legend.
Yeah,
Absolute
so
legend.
that was an awesome day.
I wanted to put in there because one of the things I did when I like kind of for the research, I broke this up into eras, and we'll get into the eras and different people and stuff like that. But I didn't finish the Allie Mack era. I'm hoping Allie will listen to this because we do plan to have her on the pod. But I didn't finish the Allie Mack era because I feel like that story's not done yet.
Yeah.
We'll get her back out here to this race for sure.
Yeah, she's done the race several times, and both the marathon and the Ascent.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think the one that sticks out to me that's crazy is Kim Dobson's record. Like Kim Dobson's just like her just dominance, absolute and utter dominance of the sport is absolutely crazy. I mean, 2009 to 2022, 10 Ascent finishes, 2 marathon finishes. She wins the marathon in 16, and then 8 of her 10 Ascents are wins, and then sets the course record in 2:24:58, which is wild. So
yeah, that was. I don't think anyone recognized how difficult the Lynn Borklund record of 2:33 was.
Yeah,
and Dobson had a really good go of it the year before in 2011, and then she didn't quite. She ran a 2:34 or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
And then the next year she came back really prepared and ran that 2:24.
It's wild. And it's crazy to think like only Nikki Brinkman has gone under 2:30. Like, and that's it.
Well, Maud Mathis also went under 2:30.
Okay. Yeah. For her marathon.
Won.
Yep.
And maybe the year that she did the marathon as well.
Yeah. I think it was the year
2019.
Yep.
Because Ninka won in 22.
Yep. That's correct.
And I think, Maud was right behind her, or not too far behind her to the top. Yeah, so we haven't talked about the 2 big years. So what all those years did, I think, leading up to the Golden Trail Series is it made people aware of just how special the Matt Carpenter record was. I think people here in Colorado understood that, but Kilian had a go at it. There were a fair amount of Europeans who came over, and even Kenyans who would periodically show up at Pikes Peak and try either the marathon or the Ascent. And they would never come close. And so, men like Chuck Smead in 1976, when he set the 2:05, he was the first one to set it in 2:05, and so that was a great time as well. And then there were a lot of years where 2:15 would have won the race.
Yeah. Yep.
And Matt's time was so far out there that it was just incomprehensible. And so I think, number one, people started to think it was not possible. Unbelievable. And
it's been called the impossible record.
Yeah, and they started to say, some people say, well, it wasn't even real, and because we can't even come close to it. But I think no one else was as serious about Pikes Peak as Matt Carpenter, before or since.
Yeah.
And so you can't really compare yourself to Matt Carpenter until you and his races on Pikes Peak, or even Leadville, or the Imogene Pass, until you try to copy what he did, and which was he was obsessed with that race.
That's right.
And he says himself that in the 92, I think his first race is in 98 or 88 or something like that.
87. Yep.
87, 88. But in 92, he was starting to get really serious about mountain running. And Ricardo Mejia, and he ran up that mountain in 92 in the marathon. And Matt was determined to break the Chuck Smead 2:05:22 record. And he did. He was like 2:05, just over 2:05. But there's a video where he collapsed at the top. He got up to the top, stumbled. I mean, you could see that he was running really, really hard, and kind of stumbles across the line. And apparently back then they had to tear off part of the number to prove that he was at the top. And while they were tearing the number off, trying to get the number off him, he collapsed. And for about, if you look at the time clock, it was like 40 or 50 seconds that he was down. And he said that what got him up was when they said, when they called for the stretcher, because he knew that his time would not count unless he ran back down. And so that's one of the rules is you can set the Ascent record during the marathon, but you have to finish the race. Whereas with the Ascent, you can just stop.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that. So the video shows him, he's just stumbling. He is totally not there. And then a couple minutes later, Ricardo Mejia shows up, and it's still a really fast time. It was like 2:06 or something to the top.
Yeah.
Or 2:0, I don't know what it was. And then turns around and Mejia looks great. And he crushes Matt on the descent.
Yeah, I think he runs 3:24 on the day.
Yeah,
wild.
3:24, which is one of the fastest times ever. And what was his descent time that day?
I don't know. It had to have been, I don't know, somewhere under 120, you know?
So
depending, I don't know what he ran to the top.
Yeah, he did not set the descent record that day, but it was close. Anything under 320, you're in the top 6 or 7 all time. And Ricardo has a couple of those. That's how good he was. So Matt, I think, was embarrassed about that race. And it was in his own backyard. Ricardo Mejia was, if you don't know, is one of the top international mountain runners, and had won, and would continue to run and win races for another decade, I think, after 1992. And so he was one of the top guys, and he beat Matt in their big head-to-head. So Matt lived on Pikes Peak that following spring and summer, and spent lots of time in bar camp, and got to know the trail like no one else. And he had the advantage of living here and the time to be able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's just interesting. So he ran in 92 when he got beat at 3:43:45. So he must have been laying down. He must have been hurting at the top.
He was literally laying down. He was laying down.
So it's interesting to me, what Ricardo did to light this fire, because I don't know, you and I both, the interview you had sent me that Matt had posted on YouTube, you can hear him say, because they ask him what happened? And he goes, or when he actually was the following year when he set the record, they asked him what happened in 92. He's like, I'd rather not talk about it.
Right. Yeah. It was embarrassing to him.
Yeah. And the fire that was lit for him to come back in 93 and absolutely demolish. And Ricardo didn't have a terrible year, but I mean, Matt runs 3:16 for the record, 2:01 for the Ascent, 1:15 for the descent. And Ricardo that year ran 3:43:14. So Matt demolished him, he even said in the interview, he's like, I wanted to put him in the ground.
Well, I've talked to a few people who were in that race that day, and one of them was Dan Nielsen, who used to live in the same apartment in Vail when Matt lived in Vail for a while. And so Dan Nielsen says, and Dan Nielsen is a really good runner too, and I think he finished in the top 5 that day. And he says, Matt was the most competitive person I have ever met. He would not ever let you win if he always had to win. Yeah. And he was just the most competitive person.
Interesting.
And they would go out on training runs and he would just crush Dan. And and like I said, Dan was a world-class runner as well. Yeah. So Matt took things personally, and I really hope you can talk to Matt here on the podcast, because Pikes Peak owes everything to Matt and in his not only his incredible talent and focusing on this race, but also his, he's responsible for, like we already discussed, the database and the website. I think he did the entire website for the Pikes Peak race for a decade or more, and literally wrote the history of some of it. So that's how much he cared about this race.
It's interesting. And it's just like you said, like the Matt Carpenter, he's one of the few athletes, in my opinion, that transcended the sport for the time period from 87 to even 2011. I mean, he won his last marathon at 47 years old. Just bananas.
Yeah. Right.
But like just transcended the period of time that he was in, so much to the point where very few people from that area, if anybody, is still talked about. I mean, you'll hear with Series and All, Pablo was talked about a little bit. You heard Jonathan Wyatt, even though he's a little bit later on. But Matt Carpenter from the 80s to the 2000s, is the guy. Right. Even up until this year, another record finally went down 2 years in a row. Or for the second, like Pikes last year, and now his Leadville record goes down. And it's just crazy, the legacy that he left and the impact that he had on the sport, which is wild.
And he still has the record for the marathon, for the Pikes Peak Marathon.
That's actually true, yeah. And that's not going anywhere anytime soon.
That's not going anywhere soon.
Yeah.
But who knows? You never know. There were a lot of things like at Leadville that have changed in training. If you listen to David Roach's all the podcasts and posts that he's done, where he's been very explicit about sharing.
Yeah, it's an open book.
The details of what he's been doing, and frankly, Matt Carpenter would have been doing the exact same thing.
Yeah,
he was obsessed with getting every second out of himself and figuring out the best way, whether that was the best path up bar trail and down bar trail, or the way to hold his arms while he was running, or hold the water bottle while he was running. I think he would have been just as obsessed as David.
I think it's what it takes. I think it's a special, in order. So I've interviewed a lot of people now on the podcast, and I just had an interview that was very interesting to me. So I meet a lot of people. I meet a lot of people with different personalities, right? So like I've hung out with John Aziz, Joe Gray I've talked to, all these different people that are like, and Christina, winning at the highest level of the sport. And I just had an interview with like Michelino Sinceri. He runs for the North Face, and he's famous now because he just set the record for the Grand. But I had the pleasure of speaking to him like a week before he set the record, before anybody even knew he was going to go for it. And it was so interesting to me because it reminded me of Matt Carpenter. Like we were talking about obsession. He's like, dude, I have a name for every rock on my way up to the top of the Grand.
Wow.
And he's like, they're all counted. I have a name for everything. And I'm like who? You're a psycho. Like who thinks like about that? And it's just like that obsession mixed with a very competitive personality. That's how you get someone like that. And Matt, I think, was just the first of his kind.
Right.
Right. To be able to
for the sport of mountain running for sure.
Oh,
have you spent much time on skyrunner.com?
Yeah. Well, a little bit, because I was looking for the book, and you can get little pieces of the book. But not the whole thing.
So he has a long course description of like every section of bar trail and the road going up. He has it's what's still a very accurate timetable, where it's a time calculator. So he says, well, if you get this time to the top of the W's, then you can expect this time at the top.
Ooh,
and you should check out the calculator. It's actually eerily accurate. It's kind of, and he was always one of the biggest proponents of saying the way you can't win the race on the W's, but you can sure lose it.
So, 100%. And it's the W's are tricky, in my opinion. I think outside of the switchbacks above bar camp going to A-frame, the trickiest part. And the reason I'll say it is because, like, for instance, like last year, Eli A lot of these dudes went out, they're going like 8-minute pace on the W's. And I'm like, how is that sustainable?
It's not.
It's absolutely not. Unless you're like a genetic freak. It's, I don't know. Like, I feel like you have to, I would be more, not that I've raced the race, but like be more strategic, almost like take it a bit lighter on the W's, and then you can exploit that whole middle section of bar camp.
Yeah.
You know, and make up time there.
Right. And that's what Matt always said is that you save time. You just take it easy up the W's. And if there was one quote I read where he said, yeah, you can check the time at the top of the W's and see how much you ruined it. Either ruined your race or whether or not you're going to have a good race.
It's true.
So if it's too fast, you've ruined your race, and good luck.
Yeah. You're for a long day after that.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think the Matt era is just like we said, just something very unique and probably something, I don't know if it's something we'll ever even see again in the sport. You know, a mountain runner especially on the sub ultra scene, whether it be at a Pikes Peak or something. One of the things I thought was interesting, not to deviate too much, but like, you'll see this era of Matt. You'll see this era of a Kim Dobson, and you'll see this era of Joe Gray's got 4 wins here.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder if an athlete now, as competitive as the sport is getting, can come back and continue to win like that. John Aziz and Christina, I think Christina might be out this year with an injury, but John Aziz has an opportunity to continue to make history if he wins again. Yeah, that's 3 in a row. You know, that's dominance in my opinion, especially with as fast as the race has gotten.
Right, and Aziz has concentrated on the marathon when the last couple of years with the Golden Trail Series, you know, a lot of the elites ran the Ascent.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. He had a really good race last year, so
big time.
Interesting to see how with more competition coming in with the Golden Trail Series, having moved on this year, how he does there. Yeah.
I wonder if they'll ever come back, if we'll get, I mean, because I know from just inside baseball that it's like kind of a very random thing. It depends on the calendar and how that lines up. And it'd be interesting. It'd be nice to see them, you know.
I don't know if it's that random. You know, I overheard, what's the name of the promoter for Golden Trail Series?
Greg Volley.
Yeah, Greg Volley. I heard Greg Volley say once that when they first came to Pikes Peak, he said, you know, what other major race, what other famous race is there in the U.S.?
Yeah.
And that was and Pikes Peak was the answer for him. And that was an obvious answer. But I think that they've had to like go out and make, they try to race at Flagstaff, and they've got their race in Mammoth, and now they're doing the race in Marin at the Headlands. So, yeah, Pikes Peak is where it's at. I think they'll come back.
I would hope so. I mean, it would make
it's part of the national series too.
Yeah, it would make the most sense for it to be.
What would make them come back every year is if we could get the TV situation figured out.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. We need Starlink, man. I don't know why we haven't like.
I don't know if Starlink is fast enough. I don't know.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, hopefully this is the start of something cool, being at the, you know, like having this partnership with them, being able to like have something at the start line and, you know, and having live commentary on the race. But it would be my hope to like, maybe this is too much inside baseball, but like in the future, you know, have like a live stream from the summit and do it that way. Or have 2 people, have one person at the summit, one person at the start, and you have your runners in between, and you can live stream the whole damn thing. And
well, they have had live streams the last few years at the summit, but no.
I'm talking like
no real commentary.
Yeah, like real, like, oh, like Joe Gray just passed the, you know, A-frame, and this was his split in 2016 when he won, and yada, like stuff like that I feel like
we're
just
missing,
gets overlooked.
It's totally missing out. It's hard though.
Yeah,
it's really hard. They tried in 2018. They tried really hard to make it happen. I know they laid a line from the summit down to bar camp.
Did they really?
Or they didn't lay a line. They tried to get a microwave dish working, and they couldn't get a good connection or down to bar camp, and so they've always been hobbled.
Yeah, we need Elon, man. He's got to hook it up.
Yeah, get him.
Somebody.
It's solvable. It's just going to take some money.
It is. Yeah, some serious investment. But I don't know. I mean, I think like one of the things that is promising to me is you're seeing companies like Mountain Outpost now, and they're setting it up and doing stuff like that.
Right.
I only hope that we can get something like that.
Right.
going.
Yeah, I think it's possible, and so it will. And because it's such a long climb, it's a race that a lot of things happen in this race.
Yeah.
There's a lot, there's a lot of times where they'll get to the W's and people will blow up, or people will get to the top and they get past on the downhill. And so much of those stories had not really been told very well.
Yeah.
Because they were unseen. They were in the woods somewhere on the side of a mountain, and just a few people got to see it.
It's like, for instance, like I've Brian Whitfield has come on before, and Kieran Ney, who have a lot of history with the race, and they're just young guns. But like the stories they've told me from like 22 and 23, or specifically 23, was like Francisco Pupi, like on the side of the trail, like just let me die, and then he resurrects from the dead, and or like Seth Demore last year, coming back from the dead to pass a bunch of guys above tree line, and nobody really knows those stories.
Right.
It's something that or you know what, man, even what was it last year with Judith and Sophia battling? They touched on it a little bit in that live or in the like their aftermath video. But like Sophia, no offense to Sophia, I think she's one of the best in the world. But like Judith did all the work in that race.
Right.
Like it was kind of tough on Judith, but just interesting.
Yeah, there's been some great races on that mountain, and 92 was one of the great ones.
It was, yeah. 92. I think to me, in the research that I did, going back to it, I just think it was the catalyst for Matt to just kind of become who he really became in the sport. Do you know how? This is obviously a question for him. I don't know if you've heard through the grapevine. How did he find this race? Like, how did the dude even get into mountain running? Like
Ricardo Mejia or Matt Carpenter?
Matt Carpenter, yeah.
Well, he lived in Vail for a while.
Yeah.
And so there's been trail races in Vail.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I'm just curious to see.
I know that he did try to, he did try his hand at road racing, and he did enter, he was I remember seeing him running around in the early 90s here in town, and he was a force, but where he found a home was on the trails and on the mountains. That's where he was really good.
Yeah. And
so someone as competitive as that, you want to go where you're going to win. And so I think that's what he just naturally ended up doing, because he was so good at it.
What other era, like, do you think, from a dominance perspective, like we talked about Kim Dobson a little bit, what about like Scott Elliott? Do you know much about him? Like,
yeah, Scott, he's overlooked because he was kind of in the early 90s period, but he was maybe as equally obsessed with Pikes as Matt was during that time. Scott was one of the first people, if not the first, to go up and down the incline, or to go up the incline.
Interesting.
He was the one who really popularized that. And he would spend weeks sleeping at bar camp. And I raced him one year, and on mountain bikes, they used to have a mountain bike race on the highway up Pikes Peak. So in 1992, he did that race and won that on a borrowed road bike. I remember. He was just an aerobic monster. He was one of those guys that you look at, and his chest was gigantic just because of his lung development.
Interesting.
Compared to the rest of his body.
Yeah.
It was just obvious that, okay, this guy is gifted in a certain way that I'm not. And that's why he can do that. But he was also obsessed with it.
He was young too. Like he was like I think it was like 83 when he won his first ascent or started the ascents.
Yeah, was it that early? I don't know.
Yeah, so what I've got in the research was 83 to 2006. He ran 17 ascents in that time and had 8 wins. Just pretty solid.
Yeah,
That's
he
amazing.
he specialized in the ascent, I think partly because of Matt.
Yeah, I would too.
And maybe he just didn't like running downhill. He would be a good guy to talk to as well. Yeah, he lives in Boulder.
Okay.
And he does, I know he still coaches athletes.
Was he really? Wow.
So
It's crazy, all these names that kind of get lost to history until you start digging, and you're like, oh man, like all these people are still hanging around and just living normal lives.
A lot of those people all the people from the 90s are still around.
Yeah. And Rick, well, the video you had sent that was really interesting, and I would challenge anybody to find this on YouTube and check it out. It's on Carpenter's page, right?
Yeah, Carpenter just created that page recently, so you should put that like in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. And it's got, I think it was Rick Trullo versus Scott Elliott. I believe that's what it was.
Really?
Yeah, and I think it was an Ascent, and they were just battling back and forth, and Scott got the better of them, and yeah, but like even Rick was a boss back in the day.
Oh,
like, that dude's calves were gigantic.
We did not really talk much about Scott Trujillo, but he was a dominant force as well.
Yeah, just an era like these. And I've Steve Gauchapin as well as who I had written down for the 60s. I'm trying to think of like era. Like one of the things I feel like we probably definitely need to address is Joseph Gray. I think for this time period now, I have it as an era, but I think Joe's, even though he's 40 years old now, I think Joe is not finished. I mean, I would imagine this year his battle between Seth James D'Amour is going to be interesting.
Yeah, they're both kind of older, but I don't. I have come to the belief that trail running, because it's such a physical sport, rewards time spent training. And, we've seen David Roach at 36 break that record. Matt Carpenter continued to win the marathon until he was 47. Yeah. I just think the trail running, Max King has had some great races in his 40s.
Yeah.
I think trail running rewards the year after year after year of training and working at it in a way that maybe like track running or road running does not.
It kind of breaks you down. Yeah. I would agree with that. I think it's interesting. Different athletes are so different too. Like with me, one of the things I found last season that I made of like, I think my training was great, but I think very specific and too specific for the time period. Like for an extended period of time, whereas like, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have done more speed work and just gotten more fitness before I entered a period of like specificity in the training, some more steep stuff and stuff like that.
Right.
So this is very interesting. Whereas like, I also know people that just run on the trails and they're fast as shit. And I'm like, how do you do like, so it's just interesting, like the different types of athletes and different times. Like Joe, I know the way Joe does a lot of his training is, there is a lot of speed work. There is a lot of fitness stuff involved.
Yeah. He trains with the top distance group, one of the top distance groups in the country.
He does. It's insane. And to do that at 4 years old is wild. His stats are crazy too. He started in 2014. So from 14 to 20 till 23, 4 Ascent wins in 16, 17, 19, and 21. He was 5th in 23 last year and 3rd in 22. But when you break down his 5th place and his 3rd, last year he had a broken wrist or broken hand.
Right.
And he ran without a cast, so he was probably in excruciating pain.
Right.
So I'm going to give him a handicap for that one. And then 3rd in 2022, and the dude had COVID,
Right.
So it's like, you take away those things and it's like, that's an entirely different race. So
yeah, he could win any year.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like if he gets himself to 5 Ascent wins, I think he's up there on Mount Rushmore of the Pikes Ascent for sure. Or the Pikes
he already is.
Yeah, for sure. And
he's had some great races on Pikes.
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. It's crazy just the history itself. And I think the only other thing we didn't hit was 2019 was with Maud and Kilian in that like Golden Trail Series era.
So in 2019 that was the second year of the Golden Trail Series. They came here for the first time in 2018. Let's talk a little bit about the descent record.
Yes,
for
Dakota.
The marathon.
Yeah,
because so there was a guy, and I did not write his name down. There was a guy in the early 80s from Idaho, I think, or Utah, who had like the 5 fastest descent times by quite a ways. And he, 2:16 or 1:16s, 1:17s. He had several of these like 1:20 or below descent times. And he had the fastest time until Matt Carpenter broke that on his descent in 1993.
Interesting.
Well, Yeah, because I think that Ricardo Mejia did not even break it in when he did a 116 in 92.
Yep.
So this other guy, I forget his name, I apologize. But so Matt came along and said his descent was 114 or something?
Carpenter?
115? Yeah.
Carpenter's
93?
in 93, his was 115.
115, yeah. So and that record also, all three of those records have stood for so long. But then in 2018, you may remember, 2018 was the year that they canceled the full Ascent and they made us finish at bar camp because of weather. That week, there had been giant hailstorms in Manitou that, frankly, all summer that year, we had so many hailstorms in Colorado Springs. I think we all were kind of traumatized by it. So when there was hail during the press conference, I think that freaked out the race management, and the forecast was not a good forecast at the top on Saturday for the race day Ascent. So they had us, even though it turned out to be okay, they stopped us at bar camp. But what happened is that it rained and snowed that night up on the peak. It didn't snow very much. I was up there at dawn or shortly after dawn, and there was a little bit of snow, but there had been quite a bit of rain. Okay. And the trail, if you've ever run bar trail, it's all gravel. There's no mud. And so when it gets wet, it is super fast. You just feel so confident. It's like you're running on rubber because everything is so grippy. And so that's the way it was on the morning of the marathon in 2018.
That's interesting. Wow.
And Dakota, was he in the lead at the top? I don't remember, but
that was here. I mean, Stian was in that race. There was a lot of big names in that race.
Yeah, there were a lot of big names in that race. And I think Dakota was able to concentrate more on Pikes Peak than maybe the others who weren't used to the altitude. Yeah. But he just totally bombed the downhill and set the record.
That's crazy. 1:13:53. That is so fast.
He really crushed it.
Yeah, that is, wow. That is bonkers fast. That's the year he rode his bike to the race from wherever he was living. I think it was Durango or something like that.
Yeah, he was living in Durango. That was great. Yeah. Then in 2019, while we're on the descent, I want to talk about my favorite women's race, which was probably 2017, because that was the year I was up at the top for the marathon spectating. And in 2017, this woman from St. Louis, Missouri, not at altitude, she just went off the front. This is one of those stories of great races that we never hear about. She totally went off the front and was at the top of the mountain is like 250 or something like that, 252.
Okay.
And had a big lead. Couldn't see anyone. And then I think 10 minutes later, Courtney DeWalter comes up. And she comes up and turns around. And then a couple minutes after that is there's quite a few minutes after that Christina Mascarenas comes up. And I remember thinking, they don't have enough time on Christina because she crushed it and ran. That's when she ran faster. She ran a 129 downhill. She caught, first of all, Courtney caught the woman from St. Louis. I can't remember her name, before tree line. And Courtney's going along. And then not very long after is when Christina caught Courtney. And Courtney was able to stay with her, I think, until the top of the W's, and then
Oh wow, that's a long way.
Yeah, it was a long way, and Christina was not out of sight, and it was a race for a long time until the very bottom.
That's crazy. I had no idea Courtney even ran.
Yeah,
Like
I know.
the Pikes Peak
that
Marathon.
was before she was
Courtney
had some of her breakthroughs. So, but
Wow. That's a good one. I didn't know Christina ran. I know Christina's smoking fast downhill, but I didn't know she's running a 129. That's crazy.
yeah, she has like all the fastest times for women.
Wow. Yeah, Christina, she's another one. I mean, I feel like another one or two. She's on right up there on Mount Rushmore. Already one of the best in the world, like easily. You know?
Yes, and she has gotten much better at climbing. I think she ran like a 3. I don't remember what her time that first year that she won was going up, but she's gotten a lot better on her climbing, and so she's it's going to be tough to beat her no matter who it is.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's a bummer. Like I said, I don't think she's, to the best of my knowledge, I know she's not racing this year, but next year. So
Yeah.
gives a little break for her, you know? Yeah. So 2009, let's go to 2019, I guess. And we'll talk, because that was a big year. I'd say that was like the biggest year for the marathon with the Golden Trail Road Series. That's when Kilian comes to town. You know, pretty much his goal is to break Carpenter's course record. And that's also the year the women's course record goes down in the marathon as well.
That's right. So there was a lot of hype that year about Kilian coming to be serious about this second attempt at the record, and he seemed really serious about it. But the day before, he did the incline hard. And I'm thinking, well, how serious are you? But he didn't really have any competition, is what he would say. He got up above tree line, and he could see that he was way far ahead of anyone else. And he was way off of Matt Carpenter's record.
Yeah.
So he had a really, what was it, 207 or something going up, which was a really good time. But it was hot that day. And so I don't think anyone was going to break the record.
No.
That's something else we haven't talked about is
temperature.
Temperature and air pressure.
Yep.
Barometric pressure, which is really hard to track on that mountain and makes a gigantic difference in performance.
Yep.
So one of the things about that 93 race is that it was like below freezing at the top. So it was a kind of a normal day down in Manitou, but it was very cold. And in fact, that's the reason that Ricardo Mejia gave for not doing well in the race, was that he got cold. Well, Matt didn't. Matt had a jacket that he wore around his waist, and then had it on at the top at the turnaround. So I think he definitely benefited from really great weather. Whereas in 2018 and especially 2019 was a very hot year.
Yep.
It was like almost 90 degrees at the bottom when the elites finished.
Oof, that's rough.
And so there was no way that anyone was going to break the record that.
No.
So when it's really warm when it's a warm day and the barometric pressure is lower, then that 14,000 foot mountain can feel like a 17,000 foot mountain as far as your body is concerned, as far as the amount of air that you have to breathe, or the amount of oxygen that you have to take in. So I think there's a lot of years where there's no one who's going to break any record because the barometric pressure is wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
And
little things that are off.
But those things don't ever get recorded, and it's hard to track down when you're looking back at them.
Yeah. Well, that's the weird thing about trails is you might have a climb that looks like another climb on, you could look at two different climbs. One could be 2 miles and 2,000 feet. The other one could be 2 miles and 2,000 feet. One could be very technical and one could be a road.
Right.
Right. And one's going to run a lot faster than the other, but we don't know that, that's
and even on Pikes Peak, even from year to year with the weather changes, it's hard
Yeah.
it's hard to compare.
Well, like we were
sometimes.
talking about too, when we were talking a little bit earlier about the course itself, like the trail. Now there's a boulder, which you might lose a second on the boulder now, having to like reposition yourself on the W's. And then there's those, you had a name for them. What were you calling them? The logs that they placed on the trail that like,
The water bars.
Water bars. Yeah. I don't know. I struggled with the water bars, so I don't know. I wasn't a big
Those
fan
big
of this.
step ups.
Yeah. So 19 was a big year. Maud from Switzerland breaks the course record, lowers Megan Kimmel's course record, and takes it from 4:15.06 down to 4:02.41. And so far that record stood. Nobody's touched it since. So.
Yeah, and that hot year makes Maud's record even more impressive.
Yeah.
I think that was, that's certainly one of the great performances on the mountain.
Yeah. No doubt.
That's right up there with. And she was not pressed on the downhill. She's not a great downhiller, but she's obviously very capable. She ran a very fast time going down.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the women's race that day was, even the men's, I mean, like, Kilian had Sage on his tail and Mark Lonstein. But, like, he wasn't, like you said, he wasn't really challenged, maybe a little bit more on the descent than he was on the ascent, but I don't know.
Yeah, he was way far ahead on the descent. That's when he passed me. I was going up.
Oh, really?
And
that's crazy.
So I could see that he was running hard, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. I've never seen him in real life. So he's somebody I want to get on the podcast.
For a few seconds.
Yeah. That's crazy. All right. So let's, I think we're pretty, we're already an hour and a half in. So I think we can probably move into like 2022, 2023, and then tie it into a bow from there. If you're good with that. Yeah. 20. And that's like the Ascent was, the Gold Trail World Series race, the Ascent. Rémi took the dub 2 years in a row. And Matt Carpenter's legendary Ascent record went down last year.
Well, I think Rémi had several tries at the Ascent, so he knew what it took and had spent some time here. I think so. He came back here last year in 23. In 22, I think he tried pretty hard, but he was unable to really get close enough. And I think, and so in 23, he came out kind of like with Matt. He came back with renewed urgency to try to get the record that year. Yeah, and spent more time. He came out here a week earlier than the other Golden Trail athletes. Mm-hmm. Did to Colorado, spent some time in Leadville, and then set the incline record that week. Which is significant, and then had that incredible climb.
I think his. Not to discount what he did, which I think was incredible, but I think that the conditions last year, definitely, it was cool at the start. I thought it was a cool year. And then there was snow at the top.
Well, there was snow all the way from the A-frame up.
Yeah.
And I ran that race, and it was like fluffy snow. It wasn't slick. Maybe, but he had to be breaking trail. There wasn't that much traffic on the trail before. Even when I came through, it wasn't like it was totally packed down.
Yeah. Oh, that is interesting.
So he had an incredible day. I think he could have gone under 2 without the snow.
Yeah. Wow.
There was nobody else who set PRs that day, right?
Patrick was right behind him.
Patrick, Kipinjano.
Who's also the fact that
he had one of the 5 fastest times that day.
He's an animal. He's amazing.
Yeah, we know he's the world champion
on the uphill. Yeah. Patrick was there. Whitfield had a great run. Chad, I can't remember. It might have been Chad Hall. Christian Allen fell off just before tree line.
Some of those guys went out too fast.
Eli. Oh yeah, Eli. 4th place. I think he died 3rd or 4th, something like that. I think Eli got 3rd last year. So yeah, just incredible, absolutely incredible year. I think it's going to be. I think that one, like we talked about earlier, that was the most competitive race assembled on American soil that I think we've had. Ever.
Maybe ever.
Yeah. That was wild to kind of witness that and see what was able to, were able to accomplish.
Yeah, that was a great year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. I think we got through it all.
I'm sure that we could talk a lot more about the race, but
I agree. Yeah, the different eras I feel like we touched on. I think there was probably, for another one, we can get into more of the women's races and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But no, I think this is a good start, and I think this does pay very good homage to the race itself and just the history there. Everything.
Yeah, it's really because of the history. That's part of what makes the race great. And not only is it a challenge that it's obvious, just seeing the mountain up there every day and how it changes with the weather and the clouds either there or not there, and it's like it's challenging you to go up there and to see how fast you can go up. It's just a natural thing.
It is. It's like, and it's this weird in between of the I don't know. For me, it's this the athlete in me wants to compete and run hard at it, but also the adventurer in me. I don't know. There's like this weird mountaineering aspect to it too. That's like this unknown above tree line, and it's this 14,000 foot peak, and you don't know what's going to happen. You know?
Yeah.
So.
The people falling apart up above tree line. That's a very common story. So if you can figure that out, you've accomplished something. Whether you're winning the race or just finishing, the ascent in 5 hours. That's I think it's an accomplishment no matter how you do it.
It's true. Those 3, 2, 1s, man. Let's do work.
I need to get up and do some because I was injured in August and trying to get back in.
Are you racing this year?
I'm planning the race. I'm entered in the Ascent.
Good. It'll be fun. I'll be calling your name.
I hope so.
It'll be fun to. Yeah, it's a little weird. I part of me, I'm excited. Well, I'm super excited to do like the commentary. Also, a part of me like wants to be. Next day, I'll probably get up super early, go run up on at least a BART camp to have some cowbells and like cheer people on. I think it'd be kind of fun. I just love being on course.
Yeah, it's a great day.
Yeah, it's special day for the community. It'll be. I can't believe we've done so many of these. Like, this is gonna be. It's gonna be 100 years at some point soon.
Yeah, it's gonna. 36.
If you count 36,
If you count 36,
we're coming up. I wonder if they will. I bet you they'll probably do 56. I would imagine for the 100 year, but you never know. Maybe they'll.
Well, they have like the addition.
Yes.
This 65th year or the 70th year.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, Mark, thanks so much for coming on. I
Thanks
appreciate it, man.
So much.
This was a good one.
Fun.
Yeah, and
it's always fun to talk about.
It is. We love these races. Yeah. Well, hey, good luck at the Pikes Peak Ascent.
All right. Thank you.
All right, man.
Thanks, James.
Yeah.